I woke up in the morning, took my baby girl Zuri to the kindergarten, and came home to make breakfast. Then my water broke. At 33 weeks pregnant, and this is how I found myself in this weird position. Yeah, this is how I got myself in the first ambulance ride in Iceland. And this is the story of the birth of my baby. She was a preemie. Hello, Rafikis and golden dying veneer. Grab yourself a seat. So I was terrified when I gave birth to my second child. I feel like I would not have any other child after this. Yeah, but this was the day we took her out of the hospital. It was a very happy day for me, but it was also not a very good day. I was a little bit scared. The hospital staff, shout out to the staff in Landspitali. They even did the bath for my baby. I had prepared myself with bottles, which she didn't need when she was a preemie. I did not know I was going to have a preemie because they give you bottles, different sizes, and these are sterilized and they're disposable. These are for feeding and also when you have pumped. They stocked me up. They gave me, you see, like that, they gave me, I think, 3 or 4 of that. The family room I had a fridge just for the baby's milk, and then there's a fridge for food for parents. Because I had like an emergency C-section, I needed these. They gave me those. Like you can see at the bottom of my baby's bed, there was all this that were given by the hospital. You guys, I never knew there was a premature diapers for preemies. I never knew it existed. They provide that. They give the pumps for Medela. They give the heaters for milk. And sometimes if you cannot express milk, they actually give you milk themselves. And it's breast milk. So yes, you can pump. I wasn't pumping so much. They also give you the titties for the babies. So because they are different. And also these are disposable. But before my baby had to get her own, to drink her own milk, she had to have a feeding tube. They give you that as well. So they packed me up from the time I was in the hospital to when I'm going home with all the teeth I would need because I was still trying to teach her how to feed. But yeah, I had an emergency C-section. And it was almost like a trauma birth. I had to have this medication because yeah, this is when she was almost about to graduate. Because I had a blood transfusion as well, I lost a lot of blood. That was my baby when she was almost gaining weight, but she came at 1.8 kilos, as you can see there. She came at 1.8, and they kept checking her weight every other day. I think it was 2 times a day. The first time I held my daughter, I cried. This was not the first time, but the first time I held my daughter, I cried. She was tiny. She was like a chicken without feathers. I'm sorry for my French. And I felt like my body had failed me. I felt like I had put my child in a place where she's struggling to survive just when she has entered the world. Like she enters the world just fighting, which was not fair. I cried because of her weight as well. I had had my first child and she was not of that weight. Every time I saw her in this place and I could just hold her from far, it felt miserable. I felt like sometimes like I was gonna lose my child. I did not have too much faith on the staff. And this was just a moment that sometimes I feel like I need to forget, but it's a good thing to remind myself. It took me a long time before I could be able to share this with you. I was having demons in my head telling me all sorts of bad things because I just felt like a failure. Now I appreciate what I went through a little bit because it has made me be more empathetical to mamas who have had premature babies or who have lost their babies. It has made me understand the babies and the moms. Before I couldn't understand, I just thought it was normal. It has made me become kinder to my kid. Um, yeah, and just become more appreciative and thankful that she's here. So I took my child to school, and then I came back home, and I was making breakfast. My water broke. I called my midwife, and she told me, get yourself an ambulance. I didn't. I know I am very stubborn. I didn't. I called the husband and drove all the way to the nearest clinic, and they said, yeah, you're not moving out of here. We are getting you an ambulance. So the ambulance that you saw took me to the hospital, and by this time the water was just flowing, coming out, but it wasn't so much. At first I even thought I was peeing. So I stayed in the hospital, and I was supposed to stay I thought I was going to stay for a few weeks until the baby's full term, but that same night, I remember my husband had actually gone back home because I told him, go home and rest and come back tomorrow. So he'd gone back home, and I was sleeping that night when my uterus ruptured. So there was just blood coming out. And when I woke up, there was something on the floor, just, dripping on the floor. And I was feeling wet. When I checked, it was blood. And I did call the nurses, and they immediately said, we are taking you uh, to the C-section because you're not dilated and we cannot wait. These guys just had the C-section room ready. They had a theater room ready, and I was already taken to the theater, and there was a man putting something on my head, and there was somebody with my hands, and I was almost, pain was starting to come in, and I just went off. So it was like a trauma birth. They did not get my consent, but I think they got my husband's consent, and they were just trying to save my life. I was losing a lot of blood, and yeah, so they took my baby out, and it took some hours before I could be able to come to term. I remember the first thing I asked was, where's my baby girl? And I meant my first child, Zuri. At this point, I didn't even know that I had delivered a child, and they told me it's in the theater, and I couldn't understand them. Not in the theater, in the Nicu, and that they will take me later. So then later on, I saw the husband. He had drove to where I was, to the hospital, and he was like, I saw the baby and she's beautiful. So I insisted on seeing the child, and of course they take some vitals and some things before they take you there. They will meet with the bed, and the first time I saw my child, I just cried. I cried like, the mad black woman cry. There are some other babies in the NICU. There are some other mommies in the NICU, and you're there crying like an idiot. I cried because I had held my first child, and she was much bigger, and this was a child that was so small, 1.8 kilos. She was so small. I felt, why was I complaining about being tired? I had always complained I was tired. I had always complained I was aching. Why was I complaining when I could have held this child a little bit longer? She would have come up better. So yeah, I had some blood transfusion as well. As you can see, and those were the injections you need to get when you've had some blood transfusion. Yeah, and this was the first time I had my child. So you can see I still have some things from my chest and from my mouth, but this was the first time I held my child. She was still on oxygen. She looks decent, but it was scary. This was after some few times after I had done all the crying and everything, and then they gave me the child, and I didn't even know how to hold her. She looks okay now, but trust me, she was very, very, very small. And the nurses, these guys are golden. The nurses, I thought they were going to discriminate on me, to be very honest, and I was very paranoid about that. But these guys are just heaven sent. They kept assuring me about the baby. They kept giving me the baby's progress. They kept telling me what they are going to do to the baby, what procedure she's going to go through when they were removing the, what is it called, the oxygen. They gave me a key to the NICU because the NICU not supposed to have pictures, but I asked my husband to give me pictures of the baby because I needed to see this. I'm always watching this. So they kept telling me the progress. They kept feeding her. Every time I would go there, she had been changed. You could see from their eyes, they cared. about both the mother and the baby. So I felt, after some time, I felt safe, and I even felt I knew them by name. They wanted me to rest alone, so they always wanted to have the baby, but I wanted to always be there with the child, so I will always ask a nurse to wheel me from my room to the baby's place, and I just stayed there with the child. The child was just sleeping most of the time, and I think they felt my fear, so they just let me have the baby sometimes, and sometimes just put her back in her crib and let her stay there while I'm just next. So these people were amazing too. The nurses were amazing. I feel like we don't give them their crown so much, but they do so much for us. I remember, because I was also mentally, I think, in a very bad place, and some of the nurses who were taking care of my kids will come and just talk to me, and I will just blabber and talk and talk and talk. And these guys were having their own issues in life, because they're human. They have their own relationship drama, kids drama, but they will just listen. And one even gave me a hug. One gave me a hug. I remember a blondie. I remember her face so well. And they will just listen, and sometimes they'll feel like they are crying with me when I'm crying. I was kind of a drama queen. I feel like we underrate the medical staff a lot. I feel like, for me, I always complain about the medical staff in Iceland, but this made me shut up my mouth so much, because they do so much for us. They do so much, and I think they work too much for us, and they try to make us so comfortable, and all we do is whine. All we do is complain. We are not seeing how much they are doing. We're just complaining because of the pain, because of the baby. But they were so amazing with my child. I am forever grateful to these guys. And I remember there was a point I will always take my child with me to my room when I had moved to the Felskida, to the family room. I will always take my child, and in the middle, the oxygen or something will go off, and the machines will go off, and I'll just press or almost run naked to call them, and they were just too patient, and they will come running, and they'll take care of the baby and tell me what it is. My stubborn nature. But yeah, over time, I learned to trust completely. I learned to forgive myself, or rather not to feel like my body had given up. Over time, with their help, they even have a psychologist or a therapist. So sometimes they feel like if you're going to have postpartum depression, you get somebody to talk to. You guys, everything I'm talking about was free. From my baby being in the Nicu, to all my baby's milk, to me having these Medela pumps, to the fridge, to the family room, the meals, the C-section. It was all free. They, even the therapist, and she was so nice. She'll be like, do you want me to help you with doing the Vinomolastopna permit for maternity leave? Do you want to help you with this or that, or social worker? So she was very nice. Because she knew that it was a new mother. At some point, I refused to leave the ward, because I didn't want to leave my baby alone, and I was supposed to go to the hospital hotel, and it caused just such a tantrum, and I had to call the head nurse, and she was just listening to me, and she's like, "You're from Kenya, I've been there," and she tries to make you calm down. I need to give them their flowers. I had to make sure I've thanked them enough, but even though I'm not getting another child, I feel like anybody who goes to Iceland to have a baby in Landspitali, at least try to be kinder to those medical staff. They do a lot for your kids. And when I was leaving the hospital, when we were being discharged, they gave me these bottles of Prenan. So apparently, the first few days, they give your baby breast milk, I think, from their milk bank, from probably some other mothers or something. And then after some time, they give them nan. And when there's the nan milk, then there is a pre-nan. Like there is the diapers libero, then there is the pre for the preemies. I even had to buy premature babies clothes. I didn't even know there was some, so I had to get some from Petite, Dr. Yes, and they delivered. But yeah, so there was Prenan. It comes in boxes, in small bottles, and they gave me like 3 or 4 packs to last probably a month or more. And I took them home. I did not have to pay a dime. And when I needed extra, these guys are amazing. They gave me weighing scale. They gave me, when I was pumping, it was easy. I mean, I have nothing more bad to say about the medical staff, especially in Landspitali. I am just grateful. I look at my baby and I feel like you gave me a gift. I did not pay a dime, guys. I did not pay a dime. And this is the good thing about being in Iceland, because if I was back home, I would have coughed 5, 6, 7 million easy. We stayed for 2.5 weeks. I was scared most of the time. I was crying when I was alone most of the time. I used to take the baby from them to sleep with the baby, and every 2 hours I have to feed the baby. That means I was not sleeping at all, and I was still being stubborn because I didn't want to leave the child. But they could see it. They couldn't force me to give the baby, but they could see I was tired, and they'll be like, do you want us to stay with the baby? It reached a point I just gave in and just let them stay with the baby, but I still couldn't sleep. I was so scared. I was punishing myself. But most importantly, if you find yourself in this journey, I understand now. I understand now the love, the support that mommies need to have, and how scared you can get. I understand. And I also understand how to be kinder to the medical staff. They're not out to get you all the time. They're there to help you. I got very good service with them. I stayed there for almost 3 weeks, and I begged them to get me out of the hospital because the baby was supposed to stay a little bit longer, but of course they knew she was in good hands and can be able to be out. But of course, on call anytime. You call them anytime they pick up. So the Nicu in Iceland is called Vökudeild. Vökudeild. And my child was a Vökudeild baby. And she fought it through. Now she's an amazing, beautiful, strong child. And it has been a journey, but we have conquered. And we look back at this. Now I look back at my baby. No more all these other things. And I'm just grateful for the miracle I have. Thank you so much for being here with me.